In this video, we're going to look at what probability is and just some basic properties of probability and how to compute basic probability. So, first of all, probability is just the likelihood of an event occurring. In our culture, we kind of abuse the idea of computing probabilities, but we do see it a lot, like in the probability if it's going to rain, things like that. We also, in slang terms, will say things like, "Oh, there's a 98% chance I'm gonna, go to work today." I don't know, just random statements like that that aren't computed probabilities. But we're going to be actually digging into how to compute accurate probabilities and exactly what it is, what some properties are about probabilities. So when we work with probability, one of the ways you'll see this symbolized is like this: a P with some parentheses and an E. And we say this is the probability of event E occurring. It's just a way to symbolize that instead of writing out the entire statement. So the P stands for probability and the E stands for an event. So if we're talking about the probability of rain, we would say that E is the event that it will rain, and then we could say P of E is 45%. So that comes to how we express probability. Oftentimes when we talk about probability in our day-to-day life, we express it as a percent, but we will primarily, when we're working on this unit, be expressing probability as a fraction. You could also convert that to a decimal, so 1/2 as a decimal would be 0.5, and then that would equal the 50%. But like I said, in this unit, we are primarily going to focus on expressing it as fractions and not converting it to a decimal or a percent. When we look at probability as a fraction, the top number means something and the bottom number means something, which is one of the reasons why we like expressing it as a fraction. Alright, so the top number would be the number of chances that an event will occur, the event that we care about. And the bottom number is the total number of possibilities in that situation. So if we're talking about the probability of getting heads when you flip a two-sided coin, then there are two choices because there are two sides to the coin, and one of those is a head. So the number of chances that the event will occur is 1. The number of total possibilities is 2, so the probability is 1/2. I like to say this kind of a little differently frequently. What I'll say is that the top is the number of ways of getting what we want. This is a little loosey-goosey because we're sometimes not finding the probability of what we want. So, for example, if we're talking about the probability of rain, do we really want that? It's questionable. Some people do. But I just like to say it that way. You could also think of it as the number of ways of getting what we are concerned about in this particular scenario. And then the bottom number is always the total number of possibilities. So now that we see what probability is, I wanted to talk about some restrictions on probability. First of all, probability cannot be less than 0. So the probability of some event occurring has to be greater than or equal to 0. Where 0 is the case where an event absolutely cannot happen. So that's why it can't be less than 0, because it can't be less than impossible. So a probability of 0 would be something like you have a 6-sided dice. What's the probability of rolling a 7? Not possible. It's not in the pool of options. So with that, we also have that probability is less than or equal to 1, or that probability cannot be bigger than 1. Where a probability of 1 means that an event is absolutely certain. So if you have a jar of red marbles, what's the probability of reaching in the jar and pulling out a red marble? Well, it's 100% or 1, because that's the only options. So that brings me to the other thing, is when we say 1, remember as a percentage, 1 would equal 100%. So this is like saying the probability of an event is certain or is 100% certain. So we usually summarize this to say that probability has to be between 0 and 1, but that includes the possibility of 0 and 1. And it's also, so the reason why I say all this is because sometimes when you get into the heart of this unit and you're computing all these probabilities, you can kind of lose perspective and you'll end up with the probability of, like, you remember we're going to be expressing these as fractions, so you'll tell me a probability is like 5 halves. Well, 5 halves is bigger than 1. So I don't know where the mistake is, but there's been a mistake in your calculation. So there is a little bit of a check when you start into the more challenging problems with probability, that you at least know you have to, if you're finding a probability, you have to end up with a number that's between 0 and 1. Alright, so now that we see what probability is, and we have these barriers or boundaries of probability being between 0 and 1, let's look at a quick example. Alright, if you have 5 black socks, 8 blue socks, and 9 white socks in a box, what is the probability of randomly pulling out 1 blue sock? And I throw the word randomly in there to say we're not looking, it's a blindfolded draw, all the socks are mixed up and they're not folded. So just randomly reaching in and pulling out a blue sock. Alright, so the probability is going to be the number of ways of getting what you want over the number of total options. Well, what we want here is a blue sock, and then the number of total options, what we'll do is we'll go through and add up all the total options. We have 5 black socks, 8 blue socks, and 9 white socks. So the number of ways of getting what we want is going to be 8, because there are 8 blue socks. And then the total options would be 5 plus 8 plus 9. Alright, so when we add all those up, we get that it's 8 over 22, and we can reduce that fraction by dividing 2 out of both the top and bottom, and that gives us 4/11. So the probability of getting a blue sock in this case is 4/11. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what probability is and how to come up with it in these simple cases. So go ahead and give a few of these a try and see how you fare.